I'm Harrell Todd.
And I'm Essie Susan Smith.
We are the self-publishing author and marketing duo that has sold over 2 million books. But we didn't start out knowing how to sell books. Fast forward past many failed promotions and a lot of lessons learned, you will see how we went from self-publishing newbies to hitting the New York Times bestsellers list and making the USA Today bestsellers list 19 times and counting. We created the Get My Book Out There podcast to give you simple yet effective marketing strategies to increase readership and book sales, so you know what to do, when to do it, and how to do it, as well as some tips for staying mentally and physically well.
Let's get started.
And we have a special guest with us today, Stephanie Harrell. Hi, Steph. How are you going?
Hi, ladies. Nice to see you both. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, good, doing well. So we're thrilled to have you here, I must say. So just to get some book cover love in first, because we do like a good book cover. Where are we? There we go. Fake, or you can see my window too. Fake dating Mr. Prince. Okay. And there's some other stuff, but Steph will talk about all those good things as we go. So before we came on, we were having a chat, and we were just like, we actually need to press record and start talking about this now, because we got onto a topic that we weren't necessarily going to be talking about. But it was on the things that you don't know when you're a new author, and how it just feels like you're always learning. Mm-hmm. So, Steph, for you, as a fairly new author, you've got a couple of books out and stuff. What's the experience been like for you with learning?
I mean, I definitely think that I'm learning. It's every day, every hour, there's something new. And I've been very fortunate because I feel like I've met some really wonderful people within the industry. So I know when I first started, a friend of mine convinced me I should write. And I was like, oh, I can do this. I can tell a story. And I wrote a story and I was like, this is so good. And then she read it and she's like, oh, honey, like this is good. And then I started realizing that writing isn't just, you don't just sit there and write. You actually have to understand that there's a story structure. There are expectations to your reader that you have to meet. And I mean, this is just the writing part of it. And then, oh, by the way, if you decide to produce your own books and publish them, you need to do the marketing, and you have to do, the social media content, and, who's going to edit your books if you can't do certain aspects of it. And I just remember how excited I was in the beginning, and I still am, because it took me a long time to decide to finally do this. And I think that's what really drives me and pushes me, because, I started so much later after I'd already gone through, a career. I was home now, and I decided this was my chance to actually fulfill a dream I've always wanted to do, was to write. But I definitely had no idea what it was going into it and how much I'd have to learn. And we were talking earlier about how I tried to explain to my husband that, I feel like every week is a new week of a new job, because I'm constantly learning. My head is just full. And, when I think back, I have to always remind myself how far I actually have come, because I started really writing in probably 2018, but I didn't publish my first book until 2020. And, that first book it's still at a heap somewhere that I hope to publish someday. But, I just didn't realize the amount of things that I was going to have to learn. I always thought of myself as an educated person, but beyond that, the things that you don't really get taught in school are the things that you need to know to write. And I really relied heavily upon, my friends and my fellow writers, because, I'd be like, okay, I've got my book done. What do I do now? And, I remember a good friend of mine, Carrie Evelyn, she started talking about the editing process. And I just stared at her, because I couldn't wrap my head around the fact that there are so many variations of it: developmental editing, line editing. And I had to keep going to her and be like, okay, who do I need? Like, how do I do this? And I thought, oh my gosh, if I can't get the basic concept of which editing I need, how am I going to do this job? And, and that's when you really need a good support system, because they will help you learn all those things. They will help teach you, or at least point you in the right direction. And I don't know how people do it Susan, you started out without knowing anything, you just jumped in.
I think that was actually a blessing for me, because I didn't know all the things that I was supposed to be doing. I just went ahead and did it.
And I think that's incredible, because I know we talked about the perfectionist piece later, but for me, I don't know if I would have started if I didn't have that support system.
Yeah.
you know, and I have people who, I mean, I love constructive criticism. So, you know, you can tear up my document, my manuscript, and I'm okay with that, especially if you tell me the why. Because I always want to, like, I'm a knowledge seeker. No, I want to know the why did I do something wrong? Like, how can I make it better? So, I mean, I think that the writing itself I get to release that creative side of me, but I also get to dig deeper, and, you know, and I love that about the stories and about myself, you know, because my writing has changed and how I craft a story has changed in just a year of me. Like, this is really, I look back and I'm like, I've only really been doing this for a year. And, you know, it's exciting to think of where it might go in like 5 years or 10 years.
And that's the cool thing about what you were saying is, you know, every week it's a new learning phase. You know, something new, whether it's in the writing portion. I'm going to be celebrating my 10th year in March, and my writing is still evolving. My stories are still evolving. And, you know, when it comes to the marketing part, it's like, I think it changes on the hour sometimes. It literally, you know, and your head, like you were trying to explain to your husband, you know, the idea of starting a brand new job every single week is so spot on. You know, that was a perfect analogy to give him, because it's true. And I don't think most people who are not in this can understand that. But it's also exciting because it is always new.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree. And I think that's one of the reasons why I enjoy it too, because it doesn't get stagnant. I mean, it's scary at times because you always feel like you're never going to know everything you need to know, which I know Narelle always tells us. I mean, and thank goodness. I mean, really, when you like, right. You know, I mean, being able to meet with you, you know, like Susan and Narelle and the other girls in our group, and, you know, just, it's definitely, it's helpful.
Yeah. I think particularly in writing, what I find is that ignorance is bliss, because I think that for many writers, they wouldn't have started. And then once you're in, it's so addictive, you know, like you're writing and you're creating and you just want to get the stories out there. And that side of things is just like, you know, raring to go. So I see it with many new authors. They're like, yeah, you know, and they're going full steam ahead with their books and stuff. And then it's almost kind of a bit like the marketing side of things, a bit of a weight, you know, pulling them back a bit because, you know, they don't know what to do, or they don't know what they don't know. And so, you know, you can see some mistakes getting made and you just go, oh, I know where this is going to go. And then, you know, you see that happen in a little while and you go, oh yeah, you know, that's because, you know, they did this or they didn't know that and that sort of thing. So I think the knowledge that you need to bring and what you need to understand about so many aspects, you know, you've got the writing, and if you just think of that and the writing craft, you think of the business side of things, you think of the marketing side of things, and it's like you're the whole business. And you know, you've in a normal business, you would have at least 3 or more people doing, you know, it's one person trying to do this. You're creating the product, managing the business, and also getting word out there about your business. So yes, it's no wonder authors sometimes can just go, I'm exhausted, or there's just too much to do, I don't know what to do.
Well, you could see, I mean, that would make sense, because I'm sure so many people walk away from it after publishing one book, or maybe just not even getting to that point, because I mean, I had cheerleaders behind me helping me, you know, pushing me to publish. And, you know, and even, you know, it's funny, when we started the signature course, and I remember thinking, because I remember you saying, well, you know, this seems very basic, but if you don't have the foundation, you can't move forward. And it's so fascinating, because all of us in the class are at different levels in our career. You know, some publishing longer than others, or, you know, and I think being so new, I was like, oh my gosh, can I catch up? And I think that kind of held me back initially, because it wasn't so much about catching up. It was finding out, where were you, or where was I should say, you know, in the mix, and what do I need to do to get better, and celebrating the small successes versus the whole piece, because sometimes you can't do everything. So you have to do what you can and be okay with that.
Yes. Yeah.
And sometimes trying to do everything, you've spread yourself so thin that you don't achieve anything. And Narelle has, you know, this wonderful saying that she says about 80% done is better than 100% nothing done. And it makes so much sense when you look at it, you know, to break it down and say, I don't know everything. I can't tackle everything now. I've got to, or especially like for me, you two are both very organized, and we're going to go into that, where I'm more the chaotic. But because of that, I think whether you're the chaotic type, unorganized or disorganized, organized person, or the very organized person, you need to know, okay, when I'm getting to that overwhelmed stage, can I bring it back in? Can I focus? And then I love how, Norel has basically shown us, you just take it in chunks.
Right.
And you don't put too many things on that list. You focus on a very narrow, specific, get those accomplished, get them into a routine, and then move forward.
Oh yeah,
And
I know. I agree with that. Absolutely. Those lists are like definitely, they're huge because I think for me, I at least feel much more comfortable. I may not be totally comfortable all the time, but I feel at least I have a path. I have a system. So because I like systems, I like to be able to say, okay, this is what I do next. Okay, all right, well, maybe I don't have time for that, but I can do, this, and this. And I think, especially with like the book launch, piece that you gave us, and even just, with the social media and marketing and all of that. So, it's very, very helpful.
And you're seeing the success from that too, from what you've shown and what you've shown.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I was talking to my husband about, because at the end of the year you can check and see how much you made. And so I was showing him, and it was like January 1st or something. And I was like, look, I think I was, paid for my first book, and with all of the costs associated. And I was like, isn't that exciting? And he said, yes, it is. And he looked at me and he said, well, when did that start? And I said, well, I had the other book, but I wasn't really promoting my paranormal romance at the time because I had jumped over to the, contemporary romance with the retellings. And, I said, oh, this is just since June. So he's like, think about it. And it was really sweet because you did this in June. He goes, imagine next year when you have an entire year where you've been publishing and putting books out and, and what that number might be. And so it even got me more excited about the amount because you have to start somewhere. Very few of us are going to go, wow, I just walked out the door and, I have one book and I made $1 million. But, and I think that comes down to like the why. We've talked about why are you doing this? And I know for me, reading is such an escape, like when when your life gets crazy or busy or, it's just enjoyable. You want to do something for you, and it's fun. And so I want that for the people who read my books. I want them to say, oh, I just need to get away for just a little bit and, and be able to read. And so, I always laugh because I always think with some of the reviews that I've done on books before, I always love it when I say, like, I feel like the characters are my friends, and I that's what I always hope too, for that people come back to my books because they're like, like friends or, people they want to catch up with.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think it's such great advice for authors who might be feeling overwhelmed or like they're never going to learn everything that they need to learn is basically just get started, start where you are. Because everyone comes in at a different place and knows different things. So just start where you are. And as you say, I think know your why, because that keeps you going then in those times where you're just like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And, it helps manage the addiction, I think, because it is a bit addictive too. And that's one of the things I think that also happens with people who love learning is that it's, you've got to do it. So, in some ways having to know so much and things changing all the time. So you have to relearn things or do something a new way. It's, it feeds that learning addiction.
It does.
So,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Maybe just a reframe of, of how we look at that as going, okay, well, yes, I have to do all these things and wear all these hats, but that's okay because I love learning. So yay me for picking the right profession.
You have to enjoy it because you think about the amount of time and, as a new writer, I'm slowly getting into my groove. Like I think I still have a ways to go, but it's nice. I have one of my critique partners. We were going through one of my outlines and it was just a page and a half or so. And, and she said, oh, wow, you look like I can already see the improvement you've made from a year ago when you were planning your story to this new one now. And, so it's nice to and I think that's the best part because I've heard, stories about people saying they didn't mesh or they didn't get a group of people that were supportive, and you need people to rally around you and to just give you those little compliments here and there. Like you have come so far, because sometimes we do get lost in, you know, what we're doing and overwhelmed. And we forget that, wow, like, and so I think it's really good to keep that record. And we've talked about like, you know, gratitude journal and, you know, what you're grateful for and, you know, really taking a step back, you know, and I think like I've done more of that at the end of the, well, really the beginning of this year. You know, I started to step back because everything was so rush last year. Like I had to know everything. I had to do everything. And, you know, I know you had cautioned me from the beginning. You're like, oh, you know, your writing schedule is very ambitious. And, you know, if that's what you want to do, you know, go for it. But you might want to rethink some things. And I was like, oh, well, whatever, you know, and I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And because I do need to have a plan, because if I don't have a plan, I don't do anything. And, you know, but on the same token, I did have to look at the time that I spent learning the craft and writing. And I have a family and I had to take that into consideration because I was all day with the kids and I was writing from 8 at night till 2 in the morning. And that's not, you can't do that for an extended period of time, you know, and I didn't want to burn out and I didn't want to lose my love of writing, you know, and of crafting that story and trying to figure out what was going to happen next, you know, or, you know, with my characters. And, you know, I think so like this year is a lot about learning about me and seeing what worked and what didn't work and having a little more grace with myself too, because I think I didn't allow that last year because I didn't think I could because everybody talks about you need a backlist, and you do. I mean, you have to, you want things for people to read, but at the same token, it's not at the detriment of your own health or your well-being, you know. And if readers, like, I really feel like, you know, there are readers begin to care about us as people. And most of them wouldn't want that for us.
Oh, if you get burned out and, you know, then the readers realize that you're not going to be producing the stories.
Right.
And if they fall in love with your stories, they want that, but they care about you as a person because, you know, not just because you can give them a story, but because you're giving them a piece of yourself.
Right.
And so, you know, it's like you said, you need to have that balance. And I don't think a lot of people realize that when you're writing a story, you are working one of the most important muscles in your body, your brain. You know, and it's like when you're doing from 8 to 2 in the morning, it's like doing a 6-hour strenuous workout without a break.
Yes.
And you can only do that for so long before, you know, it just says no more. I need a break.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And I think that it's learning your rhythm too. You know, we tell people, you know, night owls, if you're, you know, a morning person. And it's funny because I'm having all these epiphanies. It's just, I guess maybe that should be my word for the year's epiphany here. But, you know, I started realizing that I enjoy writing at night.
Yes.
You know, and I stopped because last year I had the kids home, I homeschooled, and then this year they're in school. And I thought, well, because they're in school, I have to write during the day. I have to, because I spent all of my nights doing that last time. And I realized I don't function as well writing during the day. I can get some of it done, but it takes me 2 to 3 times as long to get the words on the paper.
If it makes you feel better, I'm exactly the same way. I do some of my best writing from around 4 in the afternoon to about 8:30 at night. And that's where I get the biggest part of my writing done. And so because of the changes, I'm having to try to pull myself out of that and write at a different time. But like you said, you know, you're just not as productive. It's like there's this one time period where you can get the most done. And it's frustrating because that's the time period where my family wants me.
Yes.
And so, you know, there's that conflict because that's my biggest writing period, yet it's also, and trying to have that balance between your writing career and your family life.
Yeah, you're right. And it's true because when I had a 9 to 5, not that I didn't think about my job when I came home. I mean, you know, it's like you're able to shut it off. You know, it doesn't necessarily interfere with your family life per se, you know, and then yet with this job, you're like, oh, I had an idea. Oh gosh. Okay. Can you wait? Hold on. You know, I mean, I have 3 little kids. I mean, I can't always say that. Like, hold on, mommy has an idea. She's got to go write it down, you know? And so there is definitely that balance, and also spending time with them because, you know, and with my husband too, because for a while I was so involved in the writing at night. I was like, when was the last time we saw each other? You know, and I think that's where you really do need a good balance. And I'm working on that now. Whereas I've started to set a schedule where there are a couple of nights a week I can write until late. I'm trying to do my social media, my marketing, like some of that planning during the day. And then, and so I'm still playing with it. Still haven't figured it out completely, but I feel like I'm in such a better place. And I don't feel that pressure and that rush to keep producing books because I did it and I'm excited about it and they're there and the next will come as I finish them. And, it's funny, I wrote the first chapter for the next story that I'm working on and I did it in a night. Like we talk about being night owls, I was sitting there watching a movie at 11:30 at night. I'm like, oh, I have it, and I just started typing until 2 a.m. And a friend of mine read it and I hadn't edited it all that much. And she's like, oh, I love it. I'm already invested in the story. And, so it's great because I feel like now that I'm starting to realize what works better for me, I'm more productive too, and I think like we get so stuck in, it's funny. There's a group of 5 of us that write together and we each have completely different ways in how we write a story and how we craft a story and how we outline the story. And sometimes, one person shows their way and the other's like, I don't get it. And you don't realize that there's so many different ways to craft a story. Nothing's wrong. It's just what works for you. And I think once you start figuring that out, it's like this little door opens, and you can see that, the sunshine peeking through and you're like, oh, I think I have it. And because it feels good.
Yes.
And you got it. And you're like, oh my gosh, I can really do this.
Yeah, but it very much is about what works for you. And I think that's the most important part of the discovery process around understanding what this business looks like for you is molding it into what it needs to be for you instead of allowing it to mold you.
Right.
And I think when people step into that kind of personal power where they go, no, look, this is when I write, this is what I want to write, this is how I write, and they accept all of those things and you create your own kind of ecosystem of this is how it works for me. Yeah, people just then do so well. Yes.
Yeah. Right. You do, you blossom. Exactly.
Yeah.
It is. And I think when you find what it is that you want to write, I mean, I fell into writing fairy tale retellings. I mean, mine they're all contemporary. Well, the ones right now anyhow, but I think what really is for me is also the fact that I'm writing curvy girls too. And it took me so long to realize that. I mean, I enjoy all stories, regardless of who, the heroine is. But when I started reading more books that had girls that I felt like looked more like me, I was like, oh, this is so good, and so it like I almost feel like a sense of pride too. Like I'm writing more about people who I feel like represent myself more because there's not a lot of that's out there either. And I think like that's a large part of it too. Like, what do you feel good about writing? What, is again, your why, like, why are you writing what you're writing?
Yes.
Because you want to enjoy it. You want to feel good about it. And, I mean, one of my reviews recently, the girl said, I don't even like the surprise baby trope, the book that just came out. And she said, I only started reading this because it had a curvy girl and I loved it. And, and it was great because she, the character, she resonated with that person and she felt like that was more, someone of who she is.
And that's what you do is pull them in and get them to give your books a chance. And once they catch on to your voice and they fall in love with your voice, then it really doesn't matter what you write. They'll follow you because they love the way you write. And they love the way you write because you do.
Right. And I love that. I think I have to say, Susan, like I remember after we had met a few years ago, and it was funny too, because I mean, we had just met. I didn't know your books at all at the time. And I was just grateful that you were giving me a few minutes of your time and, understanding it. And then I walked away and I was like, oh my gosh, look at all the books she has. Like, this is crazy, and it was, I thought, oh my gosh, like I almost like appreciated the advice you gave me even more. Cause I was like, wow, I was like, she's been doing this for so long and she has so much experience and she just met me and she gave me all of this, like all these wonderful little like kernels of like knowledge and information about the industry. And Nat was there too. And and it was just really amazing,
So just to wrap up, what do you think? So ignorance is bliss, I think is true.
So.
In this case.
Right.
For those authors who are finding themselves in the position of the blinkers have come off and, they understand how much they need to know in order to, across all sorts of running in this business. What's just one piece of advice you'd give just to wrap up?
I think you need to find your support system. I think that's really, really key because you can improve your writing. You can improve your storytelling, the craft, the marketing. You can improve all of those things. But too often we fall to imposter syndrome. And I think that you need to have people who lift you up, who can be honest with you, if there's a time, not always, buttering you up or, telling you everything's great, but who's really truly care about you. And I think that that's the difference, because when someone's giving you advice, whether they care about you or not. And if you don't have that, I think it's so much harder to make it through this industry, to keep at it and to keep doing what you're doing. So finding a support system, whether it's a group of writers that live near you. I mean, gosh, my support system is largely in Florida, and, I'm in Rhode Island, and it just happened that way. And, and I'm even looking now, like, to start to meet with other people who are nearby in my area as well. But that has absolutely been key, because there's always going to be days you want to give up.
Yeah.
And when you have those people to say, no, like, you have a story to tell, like, you have to keep doing this. Like, you need that to, like, kind of basically to keep pushing you to do better and to keep at it. And I have to say, like, that's really, why I keep doing this, because there are, like, with the time constraints, it's tough, but, it's like when you have friends that are writers, because we read things so differently than a reader does, and they can read something that you wrote and they're like, this has potential. You're like, okay, yeah, I can keep doing this,
So if people want to find out more about you and your book, Steph, where should they go?
We've
got a website.
Yeah. Yes. So it's actually stephanieharrell.com. So it's pretty easy. And all my information is there.
Okay. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for talking to us today about all the things we get to discover as writers.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for joining us today. We've got way more information we want to share with you to increase your book sales. So please come and join me at facebook.com. Get my book out there.